We're here still with Bennett Holloway for a bonus episode. We try and keep our podcast at a particular length, but when you got somebody like Bennett Holloway in the room, we want to hear more. So we talked on the main episode about the nature of cryptocurrency in your work, but on this bonus episode, I want to talk more about you, and I want to talk specifically to Harding students where they are now who might have an interest and want to know a little bit more about what they can do with what we talked about in the first episode.
Would love to.
Okay, Bennett, we got a lot in the main podcast, a lot of conversation about the technical side of Bitcoin, about the history of it, about the nature of currency. Can I ask a couple of questions just as a follow-up for our Harding students? If somebody says, I'm interested in this, this guy sounds like he's working in a field I like, what sort of major should they pursue? You were a finance major, is that right?
Yes, that's right.
And so they might take finance or business classes. Are there other fields that you'd say you want to explore these fields as well?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, what really sucked me down this rabbit hole is how many different learning opportunities a study of this technology and Bitcoin provides. And so I think there's a number of different angles you can come at it with. The kind of the most immediate one would be computer science and programming. I mean, cryptography and the architecture of these networks is fundamentally a programming effort, and to build applications in and around using this technology that has, financial or kind of recreational use, that's all hard skills that would come out of learning languages like C++, Rust, Python, whatever it is that a CS degree would give. Finance, another, continuation of that, since Bitcoin, the asset, is such a fixture within institutional finance and the kind of global macroeconomic world as a whole. There's a lot of analysis and kind of learning to be done there. And then I would say there's really interesting social and political implications kind of to the question of why do we trust a government administering our financial system? That's a very rich historical question that, I mean, you could spend definitely a degree and a doctorate on kind of looking at that from a political science lens. And so, I mean, there's a lot of different angles.
Yeah, one of the things I've always enjoyed when I talk to you about this stuff, because I'm very much a novice in it, is you do the mathy and the techie side of it, but then there's also, like, you and I are exchanging books, and those are the books that we talk about reading for each other are histories of economics, histories of money, the nature of interest, those kind of things. So I've been interested in the historical side of it, and that's cool.
Can I say one thing on that?
Yeah, please.
I mean, if you listen to the most prominent investors and practitioners right now, what they're pulling from is not kind of textbook financial theory or, quantitative. Some have very quantitative models, but if you look at someone like Stan Druckenmiller, who's kind of a legend of the space, he's pulling heavily from a philosophical and historical background, and what they kind of ingest is primarily financial and markets history. So I think it's one of the most rich kind of fields to learn in that can translate into, real experience.
I think about these honor students who may be thinking, I only want practical hard skills. I don't want these gen ed education classes, but I'm hearing you say that it's actually those humanities, liberal arts kind of classes that provide the creative space to explore this. Is that right?
Yeah, I would say it's extremely foundational and essential. And I was just speaking with Joe Faith in the College of Business, and we were remarking that many of the great tech business leaders, think Bezos, think Satya Nadella, they range from all different disciplines, physics, computer science, engineering, and then they channel that into a specific business problem that they're trying to solve with a specific product. And so, I mean, it's necessary to have a very wide-ranging kind of toolkit and historical knowledge if you're going to be performant at the kind of the highest level of business. I mean, it doesn't take too long of a search to see that that's the case with prominent business leaders today.
Bennett, I want to know this too. What is it that students should be reading, listening to, podcasts, websites they should be following? What sort of things, if they're interested in this, should they be going to as a follow-up to this conversation?
Absolutely. Okay, first with a book recommendation. There's a book by Niall Ferguson called The Ascent of Money.
Great book.
What his argument is, you can't understand the complexities of our modern institutions, primarily financial institutions, without understanding their historical roots and their premises. And so that helped me kind of, put a lot of meat on the bones of, if I'm thinking about international markets or insurance, how those things started, and then mapping their kind of chronological ascent. The other kind of main area I would read, and this is probably going to be helpful for those who are already on the internet, but there's on Twitter and Substack and Reddit, most prominent investors and company leaders publish blogs. I mean, Sam Altman has a blog. I wouldn't put myself under the banner of Sam Altman, but it's helpful to just read widely what those people are thinking, and then everything that they're referencing, look through and see if there's common threads of, okay, they're all reading this book called How We Got to Here, A History of Modern Technology, and then go read that book. And so would highly recommend that. Another book I would read for specifically the understanding of the kind of political and governmental considerations we were talking about, and this is kind of a less popular book, so a deep cut, if you will, would be a book called Keynes versus Hayek, The Clash That Shaped Modern Economics by Nicholas Wapshott. This book, it's not very popular, but I read it and I was like really blown away, because what it talks about is a feud between two 20th century thinkers kind of in the first half that were basically arguing for the schools of monetary thought that were competing, and then eventually one won out and has been tremendously impactful for policymakers, central bankers, and has shaped the trajectory of kind of many, many financial and social things going out of World War II that I was just astounded to read. And it helped me realize that everything that we think is kind of like a codified, set in stone institution, someone made it up.
Yeah.
And it's a close historical read of these things is very surprising and entertaining in that way.
If students say, I'm thinking about business students who want to get into this and make money and it's the exciting place to be, I hear you saying explore the humanities, explore history and political science and the STEM fields, computer science kind of thing. What about people who are really into that stuff? They're like, man, I don't want to go into business and make money. I'm interested in ideas and big thoughts. Is there space for an intellectual and a curious person with like values other than just greed and making money in the world of deregulated finance and cryptocurrency?
Certainly. I would say the door and the opportunity for intellectual endeavors in being a practitioner, if you're pulling from that base of kind of passions in the humanities or philosophy, and you'll find that you're a very countercultural thinker in and amongst that environment, which can be even more stimulating or thrilling. And then you would find kind of allegiances or unexpected kind of allies in and amongst, people that you wouldn't expect would have a philosophical bent. For example, there's a kind of a dark, shadowy figure in the investment realm these days named Peter Thiel. He's kind of synonymous with dark, shadowy tech power broker. And he is heavily influenced by philosophers like Girard, like Strauss, and he's named multiple companies after Tolkien, which I think is abhorrent, and I think it is a grave misuse of...
because you love Tolkien, but you're suspicious of Thiel. Is that what you're saying?
Oh, yes. And, it's an egregious thing.
I think he's really lately been into, eschatology, too, like Christian eschatology.
He's obsessed with the Antichrist right now. He's giving a 4-part lecture series, I think at Cal Berkeley. I think it's this month, on the Antichrist, and he had an interview go for students, since we're giving out references. Interesting Times with Ross Ducot. This is a good podcast to listen to. He interviewed Peter Thiel and asked him about the Antichrist. And so, yeah, I mean, this is all. There's plenty of opportunity in and amongst the marketplace for honors students with that impulse.
Have you found that yourself? I think one of the things, Bennett, I love about you is when you were a student, you were a finance major and you were interested in business and sciencey and kind of hard skills, and then you just took ornithology. Just because you love birds.
Yes.
I can't have you on an honors college podcast without telling that story. Why'd you take ornithology, and should students do something like that while they're here?
Yes. Fantastic question. I took ornithology because I've always just been enamored with birds, and I didn't quite understand why. One of my best friend, all growing up, when I was a sophomore in high school, gave me one of those trifold pamphlets about like the birds of Missouri. And I was then looking and saying like, oh, this is a white-breasted nuthatch. I didn't know quite what that was. And it was so invigorating to me. So I wanted to kind of just like fully go down the rabbit hole and learn as much as I could. And that 2-week class was life-changing. I mean, it is one of the great joys in my life to see a bird or hear it and know what it is, and then be able to, talk about it. I mean, I think birds, this is kind of like the bottom of my heart answer. There's some things in life that I think will be, if not the exact same, like entirely similar in heaven. So I think meals and I think music are kind of among those things. And I think birds are right up there with it.
That's great. I love that. I love you love birds, but I want to hear you say you took a college class on it. You didn't need the credit. Like, shouldn't we just come to college and take our classes and finish our degree and get out? Isn't that what college is for?
That sounds so boring to me. There's such
Love you.
And this is true of business too, of just like, oh, I just want to like do my 40 years and retire and play golf and, live 50. There's so much more to life than just doing the bare minimum. And, with college in particular, the community and the relationship that can come of a 2-week class on ornithology is a tremendous opportunity. So that alone of like saying, oh, I could learn everything about birds on the internet, doing it with a group of 18 other people, you're going to have lifelong friendships that come away from that. That's reason enough to do it. And then as someone out in the marketplace, the idea that my highest and best use of time is to make as much money as possible so I can retire as soon as possible is just, it makes me sad when I hear that answer given for why someone works, because that sounds like a very uninteresting life.
Well,
not to ruffle any feathers if that's kind of how you're thinking about work right now.
Well, certainly you are not living an uninteresting life and have not been an uninteresting guest. I appreciate both the initial interview and then also this little follow-up. I think students will be blessed by both of them. Thanks, you guys, for tuning in for the bonus episode.
Thanks, y'all.